Hello everyone. Today I brought you a Taiwanese recap of a drama called Triad Princess. If you like it, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. At the start, our male lead, Hang, is introduced as a popular actor. His manager, Sophia, goes to a mafia leader to request a female bodyguard for him. The man insists that all his guards are men, and he doesn't hire women. However, Sophia replies that she heard he has a daughter who is stronger than all his men. With this, the scene shifts to our female lead, Annie, the daughter of the mafia leader. She's portrayed as a very strong girl who leads a team of loyal associates. She assigns them a new mission, to watch her boyfriend closely, as she suspects he is cheating on her. The team observes the man entering a hotel and informs Annie. She instructs them to handle the situation. The team prevents the woman heading to meet Annie's boyfriend from entering the hotel. Moments later, they bring the cheating boyfriend out, his head covered with a plastic wrap. Unfortunately, the man turns out to be none other than Hang, who was staying in the room opposite. Without thinking, Annie lashes out, refusing to believe she could be betrayed. She insults the man, slaps him, and finally pushes him into the water. In the following scene, we return to Annie's father, who refuses Sophia's request, stating that his daughter is not a bodyguard for anyone. As Sophia leaves, Annie crosses paths with her and immediately recognizes her as Hang's assistant. She is completely stunned, being a huge fan of Hang. When Annie learns about the bodyguard request, she relentlessly begs her father to let her take the job as Hang's bodyguard. However, her father denies her plea, telling her to focus instead on finding a boyfriend who won't cheat on her. Meanwhile, we see Hang, who has managed to get out of the water, heading to a convenience store. The store clerk is so shocked to see him that he snaps a picture without Hang noticing. Back at Annie's house, her father tells her that he intends to marry her off to his friend's son, who is revealed to be her childhood friend. Annie rejects the idea, saying she doesn't want to be the wife of a mafia leader. However, her father argues that marrying into the family will deepen the bonds between the two gangs. Annie firmly states that she will not marry anyone except a man she likes. She tries to leave, but the gang members manage to stop her and lock her up in her room. Meanwhile, at the supermarket, the worker gives Hang a jacket to cover his muddy shirt, then takes a picture with him, saying he is a big fan. Hang thanks him for his kindness and leaves the place. At the same time, Annie, frustrated in her room, looks around at her surroundings, which are covered with Hang's pictures and figurines. She even has his picture printed on her pillow. In the next scene, Hang returns to his house to find Sophia, along with Yoon, the actress he works with. Sophia, clearly freaked out, asks Hang where he has been and warns him not to leave the house without his bodyguard until they figure out who is blackmailing him. However, Hang reassures her not to worry, stating that he is capable of protecting himself and will handle the bodyguard situation on his own. Sophia, though reluctant, asks him to be careful before leaving. Back at the supermarket, we see a cute guy named Ding sending the pictures he snapped of Hang to Annie, revealing that they are close friends. He asks her to come to the convenience store. However, Annie explains that her father has locked her up in her room, insisting she marry his friend's son. Ding tells her that, ever since he's known her, she's been strong. Motivated by his words, Annie stands up, cuts her hair, and devises a plan to escape. She tricks a kind gang member named Lin into giving her his clothes and gun so she can escape disguised as him. Although Lin tells her he's scared, she reassures him that everything will be alright, then strikes him on the head, leaving him unconscious. This makes it appear as though Lin has escaped. Annie manages to retrieve Sophia's card. Annie heads to a local restaurant, calls Sophia, and asks her to come meet her. However, as she waits, four men sit beside her and attempt to harass her. Annie is about to attack them, but when she sees Sophia arriving, she warns the men to leave, knowing it's better for them. Annie speaks with Sophia, declaring, "I'm not like my father. I'm a big fan of Hang, and I want to be his bodyguard." Sophia feels uneasy about hiring Annie behind her father's back. Hoping to impress her, Annie takes out her gun and, from a huge distance, shoots at the harasser's car, causing it to flip. Sophia is utterly impressed and agrees to hire Annie. Meanwhile, Annie's father summons Lin, accusing him of aiding her escape. Lin swears that Annie attacked him and he didn't help her. Though skeptical, Annie's father tells Lin he'll give him another chance. If he finds Annie and brings her back home, he'll be forgiven. In the next scene, we go to Hang's company, where Sophia tells Annie that, in front of others, she will act as Hang's assistant but will secretly serve as his bodyguard. However, before starting, she needs to train a bit for the assistant role. A kind woman enters the room and begins teaching Annie everything she needs to know. While the woman keeps talking, Annie isn't listening. She's daydreaming about the first time she'll meet Hang in real life. The assistant snaps Annie out of her thoughts. reminding her that she is here for work, not anything else. Annie asks her, "Do I look like a crazy fan of Hang?" The assistant replies, "No, you don't look like a crazy fan. You actually look like a stalker." Annie feels disheartened, but the woman continues, "Please, just focus on your work as a bodyguard. Nothing else. Don't bring problems to yourself." Later, Annie wanders around the company and eventually meets Lin at a restaurant. During their lunch together, she asks him, "Will you expose me to my father?" Lin responds, "Never. I'll tell him that I didn't find you." He then gives her some money and asks her to take care of herself. In the next scene, Annie meets Ding, who asks about her plans after escaping her father's house. He teases that she'll be the first mafia daughter to escape because of a marriage issue. Annoyed, Annie asks him to stop saying nonsense. Ding then asks seriously, "Okay, what are your next plans?" Annie tells him that she wants to work, become independent, and no longer let her father control her life. Ding leaves her momentarily to go to the bathroom. Right then, some thieves break into the convenience store. Annie, afraid of causing damage, refrains from fighting them. Instead, she gives them all the money in the register. However, when the thieves exit, they're shocked to find Annie's men surrounding the store. Terrified, the thieves return the money without hesitation. At this moment, Hang arrives to return the jacket to Ding. However, Lin notices him and warns him to leave, saying the place is dangerous. Without a second thought, Hang leaves immediately. In the next scene, we see Annie with Sophia and Yoon. Sophia tries to convince Yoon to accept Annie as her bodyguard as well. But Yoon says, "I am not afraid of just some threatening messages." However, Sophia counters, explaining that Hang was actually attacked a few days ago, and it seems the threats are real. Annie then tells Yoon that having a bodyguard is a great idea, assuring her that she will ensure her safety, just as she does for Hang. Finally, Yoon is convinced. The next day, Hang goes to the convenience store again to return the jacket to Ding. He asks if Ding is okay, mentioning that he saw the gang in front of the store yesterday. Ding replies that they are a good gang and actually saved him. Hang is thrilled and asks Ding to introduce him to the gang next time. Later, Annie starts working with Yoon. However, Yoon escapes the shooting scene alone, and Annie discovers this reckless decision. Fortunately, Annie had previously installed a tracking app on Yoon's phone. Within minutes, she manages to locate her and discovers that Yoon had simply lost her way and was scared. Annie reassures her, saying, "Just trust me. I will not harm you." They return to the shooting location, where Yoon begins acting in a role as an addicted woman. Her performance is so convincing that Annie is completely impressed and realizes how talented Yoon is. After the shoot, Annie asks, "Have you ever been addicted? You were so real." Yoon gets angry, denying it and telling Annie to stop the nonsense. Annie quickly apologizes, clarifying that she meant Yoon is incredibly professional at her job. On their way home, Annie asks if Yoon is heading straight to her house, but Yoon replies that she wants to go to her boyfriend's house instead, which turns out to be Hang's apartment. When Annie discovers this, she is thrilled. She enters the house and starts touching and observing every single piece of Hang's furniture. Suddenly, Hang comes out of the bathroom and sees her. He shouts, "What are you doing here?" Annie immediately escapes. Hang goes to Yoon and asks, "Who's this girl?" Yoon replies, "She is our new bodyguard." Hang smiles and asks, "Do you know her number?" Yoon questions why he wants it, and Hang explains that he noticed some things missing from the house and wants to know where they are. Yoon assumes Annie stole them, but Hang says, "No, I saw her escaping without taking anything. I just want to know where the missing items are." Still, Yoon is left skeptical about Hang's true intentions for wanting her number. The next day, Annie's father discovers her location and takes his men to retrieve her. Lin quickly calls Annie, informing her about what's happening and urging her to escape the hotel immediately. Annie tries to flee but finds her father's men surrounding her. Her father insists she return home with him, but Annie firmly declares that she now has a job and will never go back. She manages to escape and unexpectedly finds Hang in front of her. She jumps into his car, pleading with him to leave quickly. Hang complies and later asks her, "Who are those men?" Annie replies, "They are my father's men." She then asks why Hang came to the hotel, and he responds, "I wanted to see you." Annie is stunned, unable to believe what she's hearing. Before Hang can ask her about the missing item, he hears her stomach growl and realizes she's hungry. He takes her to buy a sandwich, leaving her overjoyed. She tells him, "I also love elephants, and I have some figurines in my house like yours, even the outfit you were wearing." Hang smiles and then asks her about a certain notebook. Annie takes out the notebook and says, "Sorry, it slipped into my bag yesterday when I was escaping. I read it and really liked the story you've written." she admits she's curious about how the story ends. Hang, surprised, reveals that the story is actually about the mafia. Annie tells Hang that she liked the plot but also points out some additional information he missed in his story. Asks her how she knows so much about mafias. Annie feels nervous and quickly changes the topic, asking, "You write novels but hide it from your girlfriend. Why?" Hang replies that Yoon is not his girlfriend. They are only pretending to be together in front of the press as part of a marketing strategy for their new movie. Annie is overjoyed to learn that Hang doesn't actually have a girlfriend, but her excitement makes her act a bit weird, which Hang notices. Suddenly, Annie receives a call from Sophia, who scolds her for leaving Yoon alone. Sophia explains that Yoon receives even more threats than Hang and reminds Annie that she must be with Yoon 24/7. Panicking, Annie grabs Hang's car keys and leaves quickly. She repeatedly tries to contact Yoon, but gets no response. Using the tracking device on Yoon's phone, she discovers that Yoon is on her way to meet the man threatening her. The man has already kidnapped Yoon's son, and Yoon is horrified when she sees a video of him. The man begins attacking Yoon, but Annie arrives just in time, fights off the man, and rescues Yoon. As they escape, Yoon angrily shouts, "You fool! By doing this, I could lose my son forever." Annie apologizes, explaining that she didn't know Yoon had a son. Yoon tries to push Annie away, but Annie insists she will call Sophia and tell her everything. At this point, Yoon gives in and reveals her hidden past, known only to the criminal. Yoon confesses that she was once addicted to drugs and frequently went to a particular nightclub where she met the criminal. They fell in love, and Yoon eventually became pregnant. However, she later discovered that the man was cheating on her. Enraged, she attacked him badly, and he reported her to the authorities. Yoon was arrested for drug use and assault and gave birth to her son in prison. The criminal, in turn, took custody of her child. When she was released, she moved to a new city, changed her name, and her life transformed when she met Sophia, who gave her the chance to become a famous actress. However, when she became famous, the criminal returned to blackmail her using her son. To protect her secret, she concealed the matter so that neither Sophia nor anyone else would learn about her past. Annie, moved by her confession, promises to keep her secret and protect her with her life if necessary. She also assures her that she will handle the situation with Sophia. Yoon asks, "Are you a bodyguard or a gangster?" Annie replies, "I'm a bodyguard and also a gangster, if you need me." Yoon laughs, and the two women share a happy moment. When Annie returns home, Hang asks her where she has been with his car. She simply replies, "That's a secret place." Hang then says, "Well, I guess I'll have to call Sophia and ask her." Panicked, Annie begs him not to do that. Just then, Annie notices him playing her favorite game and says, "I already beat all the levels." He asks her, "Can you help me beat this level?" She helps him, and he wins. Grateful, he keeps playing with her, completely ignoring the car matter. The next day, Sophia takes Annie to meet her ex-husband. During their conversation, Sophia seems upset. Annie asks, "Is this the man who's making you so sad?" However, Sophia firmly tells her not to interfere in her life and to stay silent. Annie, curious as ever, goes to Sophia's assistant and inquires about the man she met. The assistant reveals that he is Sophia's ex-husband. They had a son who tragically drowned in the ocean, and since then, they have blamed each other for his death. This led to their divorce. They only meet once a year on their son's death anniversary. Annie feels deeply saddened, realizing how miserable Sophia's life has been. In the next scene, we see Annie's father, who is thinking of a way to convince her to come back. He decides to film a video where he acts kindly, smiles repeatedly, and begs her to return, saying that he misses her so much. He also mentions that the man he wants her to date is a good man. However, when Annie sees the video, she smiles knowingly, realizing what he is trying to do. She calls Lin and says, "Tell my father that his acting is awful and I'm not coming back." In the next scene, Annie is with Hang while shooting a commercial with a stranger actress. In the commercial, the actress is supposed to slap Hang, but Annie notices that she is slapping him for real, repeating it over and over again until Hang loses his temper. Annie observes that the actress and the director are dating each other and concludes that they are doing this to humiliate Hang. Furious, she insults both the director and the actress, takes Hang's hand, and walks out of the place. Hang smiles and tells Annie, "I didn't know you were such a brave girl. You know, I was dating this actress before, and I think she's doing this to take revenge on me." He adds that he plans to break the contract with them. Annie, however, feels anxious, fearing that Sophia will scold her for her actions. Sensing her worry, Hang hugs her to reassure her, saying it's his decision and everything will be alright. His touch makes her heart race. After that, Annie meets Yoon and notices she is blushing. As Annie keeps talking about Hang, Yoon discovers her feelings for him. Yoon tells her that she and Sophia will be traveling for a few days and offers Annie Hang's house keys so they can play games together all night, as they love to do. Yoon says, "This is to thank you for not revealing my secret." Annie replies, "I hate criminals like your ex, and I will help you get him arrested. You'll see." Yoon feels her affection for Annie growing even more. She later returns home and calls Hang, telling him she was with Annie and noticed her talking about him a lot, hinting that she seems to like him. Hang hears this happily but doesn't say anything in response. Meanwhile, the criminal is shown bandaged after Annie literally broke his bones. He calls one of his men, ordering him to find the girl and bring her to him. At the same time, Annie's father, frustrated and desperate to locate her, then he receives a call from his friend, the other mafia leader. He tells him that he's coming soon to Taiwan and wants to introduce his son to his daughter. The father gets nervous and refuses to say that she escaped. After ending the call, he meets with another gang and gives them a picture of his daughter, instructing them to search for her everywhere. In the next scene, a reporter is at the police station and notices the tension in the atmosphere. He bribes one of the police officers and asks him what is happening. The officer reveals that the daughter of the biggest gang leader in Taiwan has escaped, and the gang leader is seeking help from other gangs to locate her. The journalist returns to the office and shares the news with his boss. However, his boss dismisses it, saying that such stories are not attracting readers' attention. Instead, he instructs the journalist to focus on entertainment news, mentioning Hang as an example. He tells him to investigate Hang, noting that he recently broke a commercial contract with his ex, and to find exclusive news about him. Meanwhile, Annie's father's men are shown keeping a close watch on Ding, trying to track her location after she changed hotels. They follow him until he reaches her new apartment. Realizing he is being watched, Ding calls her and warns her to leave immediately. Unfortunately, the men act quicker, and when she steps outside, she finds them waiting for her. A fight ensues, but Annie manages to overpower them all and escape. Immediately, Annie calls Lin, demanding to know how the men discovered her location and threatening him if he had betrayed her. However, Lin is with Ding and apologizes, explaining that he was forced to monitor him alongside the men. Ding forgives him and asks how he knows Annie. Lin reveals that Annie was his childhood friend and used to protect him from bullies. While other students feared her for her strength, Lin always felt she was a warm and kind girl. Touched by his story, Ding decides to befriend him. At the same time, Hang finishes his novel and calls Annie to share the news. He invites her to his house, knowing she no longer has a place to stay. They play video games together and have a great time. When Annie asks to read his novel, Hang refuses, saying she should wait to watch the movie because he'll be its director. Annie questions him, asking, "Why would you be the director and not the actor?" Hang then takes her to a secret room in his house, where he showcases costumes for every character he has ever portrayed. He explains that because he looks kind, directors always cast him in good roles, though he wishes to play villains. To avoid spoiling his movie, he decided to become the director instead. Annie responds, "You're an actor, and no one can limit you except yourself. You can challenge yourself and do whatever you want, and I'm sure you'll succeed." Touched by her words, Hang feels at ease around her. As she begins acting out scenes from the novel, he suddenly pulls her closer and kisses her. Annie is shocked and confused, thinking this marks the start of their relationship. However, the next day, Hang behaves as if nothing had happened. Angered by his indifference, she decides to leave. Hang stops her and admits, "I'm terrible at expressing my feelings, but I like you and want to date you." Annie is stunned but immediately accepts his confession. At this point, the reporter who has been watching Hang captures a photo of the two together. Unbeknownst to him, he is also being watched by Annie's team, who had been monitoring Hang's house. They decide to delete the photo to protect Annie. After that, Yoon receives a call from the blackmailer, who demands money and threatens to harm her son if she refuses. Desperate, she agrees to send him the money. However, when he asks her to reveal Annie's location, she refuses. The blackmailer warns her that she will regret it, leaving her frustrated and anxious. In the next scene, Annie is with Ding, telling him that she is now dating Hang. Ding criticizes her, saying she never learns from her mistakes and keeps dating men who end up cheating on her. Annie defends Hang, claiming that he is different and will never betray her. Meanwhile, Sophia meets with her ex-husband, who reveals that he has received a job offer outside Taiwan and plans to leave. Although she feels upset, Sophia tells him that she wishes him good luck. He replies, "Are you sure? By this, we'll be truly separated." Sophia responds that they are already divorced and walks away, leaving him frustrated. He had hoped she would ask him to stay. Despite their past, he still loves her and wishes to reconcile one day. In the next scene, Lynn, alongside Annie's team, who are actually part of her father's gang, kidnaps the journalist. They threaten him to delete the pictures and hit him hard when they discover he planned to report her father's location in exchange for money. They warn him to stay away from Annie and Hang and not to approach them again. Afterward, they throw him into the water. The journalist, furious and determined to take revenge, calls his boss and recounts everything that happened. When the boss learns that Hang is dating the mafia leader's daughter, he decides to collaborate with the journalist. Together, they publish the pictures with a headline claiming that famous actor Hang is cheating on Yoon with a mafia girl. When Annie's father sees the news, he becomes furious. He orders Lynn to find Annie and resolve the issue before the other mafia leader finds out. Meanwhile, Sophia sees the news, rushes to Hang's house, and finds Annie there, confirming the rumors. She demands to know Hang's location, but Annie insists she doesn't know. It is then revealed that Lin and his men had kidnapped Hang and taken him to Annie's father. The father introduces himself to Hang as Annie's father. Hang greets him warmly, introducing himself as Annie's boyfriend. The father accuses Hang of dating actress Yoon and taking Annie as his mistress, stating that he disapproves of their relationship. However, Hang explains that he and Yoon are not dating and that the journalist fabricated the rumor. He confesses that he is truly in love with Annie and wants to be with her. Hang promises to hold a press conference to clear up the misunderstanding and publicly announce his relationship with Annie. The father, noticing Hang's sincerity and kind demeanor, begins to calm down slightly. In the next scene, Hang is with Yoon and Sophia, who scolds him harshly for what he has done, saying that Annie is only an assistant and that dating her would be a scandal. Hang defends Annie, asserting that he is a human being with the right to date whoever he wants. He explains that since Annie came into his life, he feels alive rather than just an acting robot. He vows to defend their relationship, even if it costs him his fame. Yoon stands by his side, promising to attend the press conference with him and announce that their previous relationship was merely a promotional strategy for the film. Eventually, Sophia reluctantly agrees to their decision. However, on the day of the press conference, Sophia shows Hang the negative comments about Annie, highlighting how people are attacking her. She warns that the situation will worsen if the public learns that Annie is the daughter of a mafia leader, which will only harm her further. Taking this into account, Hang announces at the press conference that he and Annie are not dating and that she is merely his assistant. He claims he hugged her while he was drunk and apologizes to her and her family. When Annie hears this, she is utterly heartbroken. Her father, watching, grows furious, feeling betrayed by Hang. Annie decides to resign from the company and leave her position. She even moves out of Hang's company after handing a file to the assistant, instructing her to give it to Sophia. As for Hang, he desperately tries to contact her, repeatedly calling her number, but she has turned off her phone. Wandering the streets in despair as rain pours over her, Annie eventually calls her father, crying and apologizing. He tells her to return home, and she finally agrees. Suddenly, a man with an umbrella approaches and offers to drive her. It is revealed that this man is the son of the other mafia leader and is intended to marry Annie. The families sit together to discuss the wedding date. During the conversation, the man asks Annie if she accepts marrying him. Annie responds that she does. Later, she steps out to drink, and he follows her to check if she is okay. He tells her that he saw the press conference and feels sorry for her. He asks for a chance, saying that he is a gentle and kind man who genuinely likes her. Afterward, Annie goes to her room and removes every single thing related to Hang, discarding it all. The next day, she meets with Sophia to apologize for breaking the contract, which stated that she was not allowed to date Hang. Sophia is furious, accusing her of ruining everything. Annie then shares a heartfelt memory. When she was young, she lost her mother in an accident, and her father carried guilt for years. One day, he dreamed of his late wife, who told him it wasn't his fault. Sophia, surprised, asks why Annie is telling her this. Annie responds, "I want you to know that your son's death is not your fault or his father's. Neither of you is to blame. I also feel that he still loves you and you still love him. You should reconcile." Sophia, deeply moved by Annie's words, leaves without saying a word. In the next scene, Annie meets with her fiancé and comments on how much weight he has lost. The man recalls how she used to mock him for being overweight and reminds her of her playful promise to marry him if he ever became thinner. Smiling, he tells her, "Now I'm handsome and I've come to marry you." Meanwhile, Hang gets into a fight with some strangers and is taken to the police station. Sophia arrives to bail him out and confronts him, asking why he's behaving this way and if he's trying to take revenge on himself. Hang confesses that he loves Annie deeply and that his feelings for her are pure and sincere. He admits he can't bear being apart from her. Sophia mocks him, saying he sounds like a character in a romantic movie. Frustrated, Hang retorts, "Are you even human? I feel like you're a robot. Have you ever fallen in love?" Angered by his words, Sophia snaps, "The woman you love is about to be married." Upon hearing this, Hang loses his temper and rushes to Annie's house, shouting her name. The men guarding the house kick him out, but Hang stays firm, waiting across the street all night. Eventually, he sees Annie's car arriving with her fiancé. Hang calls out her name, but Annie, despite hearing him, chooses to ignore him, even as her fiancé advises her not to. In the next scene, we see Sophia opening the file Annie had sent her. Inside, she finds the novel Hang wrote, encouraging her to support him in pursuing his passion. As Sophia reads, she recalls Hang's words to her. Deep in thought, she decides to call her ex-husband for the first time since their divorce. She asks when he will travel so she can bid him farewell. Surprised, he remarks, "It's strange that you're calling me. However, I'll return as always, once a year to meet you." Sophia grows nervous and abruptly ends the call. The next day, Annie meets her fiancé, who treats her kindly as usual. She tells him that he is very nice and sweet, but she has no romantic feelings for him and only sees him as a friend. He responds by saying that they still have plenty of time, and he will continue to try to win her heart. He informs her that he will be traveling to China soon and offers for her to come along to lift her spirits. She says she will think about it. Later, Annie receives a message from Hang, in which he confesses that he loves her and cannot live without her. He asks for a chance to explain the reasons behind his actions, but she decides to ignore him. Shortly after, Annie receives a call from Yoon's phone, only to discover that it is the criminal on the line. He informs her that he has kidnapped Yoon and threatens to harm her unless Annie comes to a specific location. Panicked, Annie rushes to the place he mentioned and finds him waiting with a gun. He tells her, "If you kill me, you'll never know where Yoon is." Annie throws her gun aside, and the two begin to fight one-on-one. The criminal grabs a knife and stabs Annie in the stomach, though the wound is not serious. Despite the injury, Annie gets back up, fights him fiercely, and beats him until he faints. Moments later, Lin arrives at the scene and asks Annie if she is okay. She questions how he found her, and he explains that he saw her leaving in a hurry and, worried for her safety, decided to follow her. Grateful, Annie thanks him and enlists his help in searching for Yoon. Together, they find and free Yoon. Yoon thanks Annie, who reassures her, saying, "I promised you I'd never abandon you, and I also promise that we'll find your son." Determined to fulfill her promise, Annie has her men kidnap the criminal. She interrogates him about Yoon's son's location, but he refuses to speak. Frustrated, she orders her men to throw him in the water. Yoon panics, pleading with her not to handle it this way, but Annie calms her down, saying, "Don't worry, he won't die. When my team and I want to discipline someone, we throw them in the water." After that, Annie instructs Lin and his men to escort Yoon home. Lin insists on staying with Annie and taking her to the hospital, but she tells him his mission is to ensure Yoon's safety and that she will take care of herself. At this time, Ding releases a new song, as he enjoys singing and playing the guitar. To his surprise, the song gains immense popularity, and he suddenly amasses a huge following. Even Yoon's company reaches out to him to sign a contract, which fills him with happiness. Meanwhile, Annie is bleeding severely and begins losing consciousness, leading to a major accident. She is immediately rushed to the hospital. The hospital staff contacts Hang, who hurries over, only to find Annie's fiancé already in the room with her. Feeling heartbroken, Hang leaves the room, but Annie's fiancé follows him. Hang confronts him, asking what he wants, and the fiancé responds by accusing Hang of making Annie suffer, claiming that he is unsuitable for her. He asserts that he can make Annie happy, unlike Hang, who as an actor, would only cause harm to her. He reveals that Annie's mother was an actress who gave up her career to marry her father, then asks if Hang is willing to make such a sacrifice for Annie. Hang, taken aback, replies that this is not his decision to make. It is up to Annie to choose what she wants. At that moment, Annie wakes up in a frenzy and begins desperately searching for Hang. She tries calling him repeatedly, but he does not answer. She steps outside and finds only her fiancé. Hang, from a distance, watches her calls but, convinced by the fiancé's words, decides to walk away. A month passes, and Sophia gives Hang's novel to a director, asking him to mentor Hang in directing and acting in villainous roles. Later, Hang meets with Yoon, who encourages him not to give up. He asks her if she knows anything about Annie, and Yoon reveals that Annie has agreed to travel with her fiancé. Panicked, Hang rushes to the airport, where he spots Annie. He calls out to her, asking her not to leave. She turns and smiles, agreeing to stay. The drama concludes with a shocking twist. The criminal who had been blackmailing Yoon is shown meeting with Annie's fiancé. It is revealed that the fiancé is actually the gangster orchestrating the criminal activities. Season 1 ends with this revelation, and Season 2 is not released yet. Anyways, if you like this video, don't forget to give us a like, and see you next time.